Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not here today. Sorry about that, but I will help you out. We're going to be doing all these cool things today. Trinomials, box method, factoring, GCF, all sorts of things. All right, in your packet, numbers 1 through 4, prime factors. It's asking for what are the prime factors of all these numbers. You have to do a factor tree. If you can't remember what a factor tree is, I will talk about one. We're going to take this number 44, right there. 44, we want the lowest prime number that goes into it. 2 goes into 44 22 times. I do the same thing for 22. Lowest prime that goes into it is 2. Is 11 prime? Yes, it is. Look at this. Our prime factors are 2 times 2 times 11, which equals 2 squared times 11. Our prime factors, 1 through 4. Now, if you were to have a variable, you just have to expand it out. All right, find the GCF of these two numbers. Got to prime factor both of them. So let's do this. Well, I'm going to erase them. Let's go 40 over here and 72 over here. 40, smallest prime number is 2 and 20, 2 and 10, 2 and 5. All right, same thing with this. We go 2. 2 goes into 7 36 times there. 2 again, that's 18. 2 and 9. 3 and 3. All right, the GCF is what they have in common. Now, I'm going to highlight what they have in common. You know, I'm just going to underline it. They have a 2 and a 2. A 2 and a 2. A 2 and a 2. They don't share those 5s and they don't share the 3s. So what you do is you take 3 sets of 2, multiply them together, and 8 is the largest number that will go into 40 and 72. That is the largest number. Largest number. Now, let's say they had an x in common. What if they had 2 x's? Well, then they would have x's or x squared. They could have all sorts of things in common. But prime factor, GCF. All right, here, we're going to factor out the things that they have in common. All right, now we're going to break down 8x squared, okay, into its prime factors. It's 2 and 4, 2 and 2. So, it's this, this, and this. Those are all my prime factors. Now, 12 is 2 and 6, 2 and 3. So, prime factors, I'm just going to circle them up here. X squared is actually x and another x. Now, let's circle what they have in common. Or let's underline it. A 2 and a 2, another 2 and another 2. They have 1x as well. So what they have is, here's their GCF. So their GCF is 2 times 2, which is 4, and they have an x, that's a 4x. Okay, now what we get to do is we get to write it like this. We put 4x out in front, parenthesis, whatever's left over. All right, so this is, what's left over is 2 and x, so 2x. Usually keep the sign, which is plus, and then all we have left is a 3. So we factored out the greatest common factor. We're done, and we can move on. All right, one of my favorite things is to look at polynomials, and it gives you really cool stuff here, okay? Now, right away, you got to ask yourself, what do they have in common? What they have in common, or what do they have in common? They have in common an x plus 2. That is their GCF. I write x plus 2. I'm done with it. I don't need x plus 2 anymore. What am I left with? I'm left with 2x minus 4. I have factored out the greatest common factor. All right, factor. Here we're going to find length and width on the sides. Okay, so what we're going to actually do is we're going to work backward to find out what goes in here. What go in the parentheses. So let's build a box. We know that m squared goes here. We know that 2 goes here. We know that m times m is m squared. Now comes the tricky part, okay? Now, you're going to probably have to build a table. All right? The first thing you really need to look at is the sign. Or those two signs. This sign right here tells us something very important. It tells us that these two numbers that go right here are going to be the same sign. This sign right here tells us, okay, if this is the same sign, now I look over here at this sign tells me they're both going to be positive. So I can put plus. Now I got to figure out those two numbers. I've got to find numbers that have they're a multiple of 2, and that when you add them up, they equal 3. So let's see what we have. Whoa, well, there's only one multiple of 2. It's 2 times 1. Hopefully that adds up to be 3. It sure does. It checks off. So I can put a 2 here. I put a 1 there. Now, I got to write it. Ready? Parenthesis, m plus 2. Parenthesis, m plus 1. We're done. That one's done. Second one. All right, let's build our box. W squared plus 5. We know that W goes here. We know. All right, I made a mistake. I actually need a -6 here. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a box. I've got to have multiples of 5. And when they add, they better be -6. Now, look at this one right here. That tells me I have 2 of the same sign. The sign I have is negative. Their multiples of 5 are -5 and -1. Those add up to be -6. Those are the only multiples. So it's going to be -w and -5w. So what I have is a polynomial that looks like this. X minus 5 times x minus 1. All right. The last one's the hardest, so you better make sure you listen. All right, it says factor t squared minus 4t minus 12. All right, so I know that I multiply and I need -12. When I add, I've got to get -4. Let me build my box. I know t squared goes here. I know -12 goes here. Now, let's think about it. When I have -12, to get -12 by multiplying, I got to have a positive and a negative. Got to have a positive and negative. Well, which number is larger? That guy tells me, this sign right there, it tells me that the larger number is going to be negative. So let's do all these multiples and let's make sure that the multiples have the larger number is negative. So let's think of it. We got -12 times +1, -6 times +2, -4 times +3. That's it. Those are all the multiples. When you add this up, that equals -11. -11. This is -4, and this is -1. Which one is it? I'm looking for -4. It's right there. Remember that 6 is negative. It's bigger, and +2. Let's write our parentheses. T plus 2, t minus 6. It doesn't matter who is written first. It's multiplication. And we're done. Now, make sure you get your packet done. It does not leave that room. And make sure you're good for Mrs. Hilliard.
Made with Doodlecast Pro.